finished, Doug. Your Honor, David March is an innocent man. Not just because he's presumed innocent, it's because he actually is innocent. And what counsel just told you in her opening statement will not be borne out by the evidence. First of all, I don't know why she said it, but counsel interjected in her opening statement the race of Laquan McDonald. Race has nothing to do with this case. This case is about law and order. It's about Laquan McDonald not following any laws that night. There must be some individual responsibility attached to McDonald. Counsel says McDonald committed non-violent crimes. Nothing could be further from the truth. What she didn't tell you, but will be borne out by the evidence, Your Honor, is that night, while David March is at Area Central, because his tour of duty just started, Laquan McDonald is armed with a knife. Under Illinois law, Judge, you're going to find out that knife is a Category 2 dangerous weapon. And with that knife, he is committing forcible felonies. He is burglarizing trucks in a truck yard several blocks away from 41st and Pulaski, several blocks west near 40th and Keeler or 40th and Kedvale. There's a civilian she doesn't tell you about, Your Honor, whose name is Rudy Barillas. And when we want to talk about police reports, you're going to see the police report regarding Rudy Barillas, a victim in this case. Rudy Barillas is a truck driver. And that night, with his wife with him, he's parking his truck and he sees Laquan McDonald burglarizing trucks. Now, counsel will say that's a nonviolent crime. Well, maybe, but it is a forcible felony, and that's important. It's important for David March and the complete investigation he did in this case. It was Rudy Barillas, Judge, who took his cell phone and he called 911. Do you know why Thomas Gaffney and Joe McElligott are responding to the scene that night? Because an innocent civilian named Rudy Barillas called 911. And what happened next, Judge, is Rudy Barillas confronted McDonald and told him, stop. I just called 911. What does McDonald do? With that knife, he takes a swing at Rudy Barillas. That, Your Honor, is an attempt murder. That, Your Honor, is an aggravated assault. Those two crimes are violent. To the point where Rudy Barillas is able to get away from that cutting instrument and throws his cell phone at McDonald, allowing Rudy and his wife to escape what could have been their death. That's Laquan McDonald. What happens next? McDonald, still with a knife on his person, begins to walk east. In comes Joe McElligott and Tom Gaffney, uniformed Chicago police officers in a marked Chicago police SUV. Joe McElligott gets out of his SUV and follows McDonald on foot. Tom Gaffney stayed in that SUV. They were doing their jobs that night. They were responding to a citizen's 911 call. McDonald needed to be arrested. That's what police do when they serve and protect the citizens of this city. And what happened next, Judge? Joe McElligott has his gun out. several times. I don't even know how many times Joe McElligott is going to tell you how many times he ordered McDonald to stop and drop the knife. Never did McDonald comply with those orders. And you know, Judge, a person does not have a right to resist arrest, even if he thinks the arrest is unlawful, and further, if it indeed is unlawful. That's the law in Illinois. McDonald doesn't comply with police orders. What are these human beings in uniform supposed to think? So, with McDonald on strike it, with McElligott on foot, and Tom Gaffney in a vehicle, they are proceeding following this armed man from these forcible felonies eastbound towards Pulaski, where there is a Burger King. Tom Gaffney is thinking like a excellent policeman who's trying to do his job. He's going to use his police vehicle to try to block McDonald. Why? Because there's a Burger King right there. And if McDonald gets in that Burger King with that knife, with innocent civilians in that restaurant, then this situation is worse. A hostage situation, if nothing else. So Tom Gaffney blocks McDonald with that police cruiser. What happens next? And the physical evidence will bear this out. McDonald, who Tom Gaffney has never met before, uses that knife to pop the tire on that police SUV. Now, I don't know about you, Judge, but do you know how much force is necessary to pop a big tire on an SUV? A lot. McDonald doesn't stop there. He takes that knife and he jams it into the windshield. That is violence, Your Honor. That's not just criminal damage to property, which, by the way, is criminal. That is a violent act, Judge, that indicated to Tom Gaffney and Joe McElligott and every police officer out there on police radio, when they all hear, "You just popped my tire," that this man, 6 feet, 185 pounds, with PCP running through his veins, this man will use that knife against even uniformed police officers. The other human beings that night wearing uniforms have got to be aware and afraid. Thankfully, Tom Gaffney stops McDonald to go to that Burger King, because then he runs to that Burger King lot, and now he's out in Little Pulaski. 2 lanes in each direction. It is a major thoroughfare. McDonald's not walking down the sidewalk on place, he's walking down the middle of Pulaski. That's against the law, too. And then soon thereafter, Officer Joe Walsh and his partner, Officer Jason Dyke, pull up in their police cars. They are doing their jobs. They are human beings. And for the love of God, McDonald never drops that damn knife. He never followed any police commands at night. What's going to happen next? Well, Judge, you're going to see and you're going to hear that at that location at 41st and Pulaski, there's a Burger King that is on the west side of Pulaski, a Dunkin' Donuts on the east side of Pulaski, but on the west side of Pulaski is a construction fence with tarp. That area, which is now a strip mall, was under construction, thankfully, because there weren't any civilians over there. But where there were civilians was further down Pulaski, where it is more populated, where there are more restaurants, where there are more bus stops, where there are more motorists. McDonald has that knife out, and he is swinging that knife. And as Nora Fontaine will say, he is swinging that knife, which is going from left to right at waist level. And you'll see on the video, Judge, that McDonald is walking in an aggressive, bouncing manner with that knife. And more importantly, he's not running anymore. He's walking. He's getting ready for battle. What is Joe Walsh and Van Dyke supposed to think at that point? Indeed, there are other uniformed police officers out there trying to stop this crazed individual. Dave Marks isn't there for anything. He's still here. After the shooting, all of the 8th District police officers out that night are there trying to secure a crime scene, make sure ambulance can get to that crime scene, waving motorists away. And Dave March gets notified by his sergeant, Dan Gallagher, to go respond to that shooting at or near 4112 South Plaza. Dave March gets there. He didn't see it. He doesn't know what happened, but it's his job as a detective to find out. And what he does, Your Honor, is what every good detective does. He goes around to all of the witnesses and he separates them and he talks to these witnesses individually. He talked to Dora Fontaine individually. He talked to her partner, Officer Ricardo Viramontes, individually. He talked to Officer McGilligan and Officer Gaffney and Officer Walsh and even Officer Van Dyke and some other 8th District police officers individually. And he had a form, and you know what it's called. It's a general progress report. It's a GPR, and he's just taking down information. Dave March is not a judge and a jury. He cannot critique the substance of what he's being told. He's a reporter. He reports what the witness told him. Even if he doesn't believe it, he's duty bound to write down what that witness told him. And that's what he did. But he did other things, Judge. As a lead detective in that case, he made sure that that investigation was thorough and complete and professional. He made sure the evidence technicians picked up every one of those 16 shell casings. He made sure nobody tampered with that crime scene. And guess what, Judge? Which, by the way, when you read this indictment, Dave March did something, Your Honor, that flies in the face of this indictment. Dave March and another officer inventoried the video they rely on. The video that the whole public has seen. Dave March, Your Honor, preserved that video. He inventoried it. He made sure it never got deleted. He made sure that if anybody wanted to see it someday, whether it's a police superintendent, a mayor at City Hall, or even the public, Dave March kept it preserved for everybody to see someday. He has no authority to release it to the public or not release it to the public. He's just a detective doing his job. Yet the indictment, Your Honor, which is nonsense, says that Dave March and these two other innocent men, Joe Walsh and Tom Gaffney, they conspired together with the goal of preventing Jason Van Dyke from being charged or prosecuted and to prevent the public from seeing this video. Dave March inventory that video flies in the face of that nonsense. And further, they charge that this conspiracy was to prevent independent police agencies from looking at this. Really? It was there that night. IPRA saw the video. Not long after this, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office are doing a joint investigation in this matter. They're looking at the video. Who's keeping the video secret? The Cook County State's Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office are interviewing witnesses, putting them in a federal grand jury. Hell, IPRA was taking statements that night and the days to come. Dave March, nor any of these two other gentlemen or any police officer have any authority to prevent a prosecutor's office from charging an act. That's their call, not the police. Let's talk about Dora Fontaine. I can't wait to see her, Your Honor, and here's why. Ms. Holmes didn't tell you this part, but Dora Fontaine has given at least 7 statements since that night. since she told Dave March what she saw that night. And some of those prior statements, Your Honor, are under oath. Under oath, where she swore to tell the truth. And we're talking about the federal grand jury, we're talking about the Inspector General's investigation, which was sworn to, and we're talking about the special prosecutor's grand jury. And you know, Judge, under 1510.1, that if there is a prior inconsistent statement under oath, the trier of fact can consider that statement as substantive evidence, as if Fontaine was saying it in this courtroom today. So when she said to so many people under oath, Dave March didn't tell her what to say, Dave March didn't direct her what to say or do, Dave March didn't put words in her mouth, Dave March didn't force her to say anything, you can believe those prior under oath statements and reject this person whose testimony is incredible, to say the least. Counsel talks about police reports. Well, you're going to see all the police reports, Judge. You're going to see all of them. And the evidence, Your Honor, is McDonald was an offender that night. He committed aggravated assaults against at least 3 police officers. They don't want to believe that, but that's the facts. And the OBR, the officer's battery report, it applies to assaults and aggravated assaults too. You don't have to be battered for that report to be prepared. They don't talk about that disclaimer that's at the top of the report. Dave March never writes that Jason Van Dyke was battered. Make no mistake about it. The Quan McDonald was an offender that night, starting with an innocent victim, Rudy Barillas, and including all these other officers that are trying to do the job and stop him from further harm. And as far as Dora Fontaine, you're going to hear, Judge, in no uncertain terms, today, I suspect, maybe tomorrow, who knows, contrary to all of the other under oath statements, that of all the things she said to Dave March, she admits saying that to Dave March with one exception. 1/2 of one sentence in his handwritten notes she's coming off of. Well, Judge, Dave March wrote over 50 pages, single space, of reports in this case. 1/2 of one sentence amounts to obstructing justice and official misconduct? You got to be kidding me. What she's coming off of, she said it. She said it. And the only reason she's coming off of it now is she has to be a witness in this case because she needs this job. Because like Joe Walsh and Tom Gaffney and so many other 8th District police officers that night, the Inspector General wanted her fired too. She did change her story to save her ass. She is a liar. And all of the prior under oath statements, Your Honor, will prove that. At the very least, Judge, it amounts to reasonable doubt. You cannot believe Dora Fontaine. Pick a state, but all of them together, you cannot believe her. I want you to look at the police reports. I want you to look at the video. These men want you to look at all the reports and video. Look at whatever your feelings are about Jason Van Dyke, whatever you believe about his actions, that's different than what these men did and what these men wrote. Police reports, as you know, are summaries. In almost every other case, they're not even admitted as evidence. Jurors don't get police reports. But the special prosecutor wants you to equate statements and summaries of reports as crimes. It's not. It might be impeachment, but it doesn't rise to the level of criminal conduct. Not in a criminal courtroom with the burden of proof the state has. You may disagree with a police officer who writes in a report that McDonald was an offender of an aggravated assault against Joseph McElligott, or Thomas Gaffney, or Joseph Walsh, or even Jason Van Dyke. You may disagree with that. But detectives' march of position on that is not based on what he saw in the video. Dave March's investigation spanned several months. It included collecting a lot of evidence, interviewing a lot of people who would be interviewed. His position when he filed a cleared and closed report is based on the entire investigation, from Rudy Barillas to the PCP in McDonald's body. And you may agree with it, or you may disagree with it. But even if you disagree with it, that's what it is. It's a disagreement. His opinion, based on his entire investigation, is his opinion. It's not a crime. I submit to you, everything Dave March wrote to you is the absolute truth supported by all the evidence in this case. Not a theory supported by politics on the outside of this building, on the outside of this courtroom.
Judge, I would object to it.
Your objection is noted. It's overruled. This is argument and what they expect the evidence to show. The court's only going to consider what's relevant.
Counsel says that this case is about violating the public trust. What police officers wrote on paper versus video. Let me tell you something. The police officer in this courtroom, police officers in this courtroom, were not violating the public trust. They were doing their jobs on behalf of the public. McDonald was violating every law he could possibly imagine that night. And if it comes down to police reports versus video, remember this. Dave March considered so much more than the video. And that's why his reports reflect what they do. And last but not least, Judge, as you know, the burden of proof is on the state. They must prove David March, an honest, decent, professional detective, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The evidence is so lacking in this case, I submit this should be directed out. The state will not satisfy the burden of proof, Your Honor. They cannot. There is no evidence. They may want to believe some narrative out there, but there is no evidence that these men conspired. There is no evidence of any agreement whatsoever. David March never met Joe Walsh and Tom Gaffney before that night. There's no evidence of agreement, and there's no evidence whatsoever of any obstruction of justice or any official misconduct. For all those reasons, Your Honor, at the close of the state's case, we're going to ask that you find David March not guilty.